Welcome to the Rotowire DFS podcast brought to you by FanDuel.com, the leader in one-day fantasy sports. I'm your host, Josh Hayes, joined as always by Benny Ricciardi as we break down the Monday NBA DFS slate. You can always find Benny on Twitter at BennyR11 and over at RotoCurve, Rotowire, and as a featured writer in the DraftKings playbook. And you can just follow me on Twitter at JoshHayesFS. The Rotowire DFS podcast is available on iTunes and Stitcher, so if you get a chance to rate, review us, please go ahead and share. Don't forget to subscribe. Benicio, are you ready for another week to kick off of NBA DFS?
Yeah, we're down to the home stretch of the season with the All-Star break having ended last week. So, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to, bring it home and make some more money before we have to roll on to MLB.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to keep that rolling here all season long. So let's go ahead and dive right in here. Point guard position, 7 games on tap. We got the Warriors playing against Atlanta. We got some other top teams that are going to be playing at a pretty good pace here. Phoenix at the LA Clippers. Phoenix with the back-to-back games. Let's go ahead and talk about your top options here at the point guard position for Monday.
Yeah, the first guy that kind of stuck out to me was Chris Paul. But I'm a little nervous about that game and how it's going to wind up going. He's getting expensive right now. Like he's up to, I think he's almost 10K now on FanDuel. So we need about 50 fantasy points out of him. And with a 16-point spread in that game, it could definitely get ugly in the fourth quarter. So I've actually been looking to go down to the mid-range a little more. We don't know if Jeff Teague is going to play. If Jeff Teague is out, I think Schroeder becomes like almost an automatic start for me. Other than him, looking at Goran Dragic, he's been a guy that I've been rolling out there a lot with, Dwayne Wade hurt. He's been getting extra minutes and extra usage. He's been scoring more, racking up a bunch of assists and all that. So I like Goran Dragic as well a lot. And then Jordan Clarkson, who you and I talk about all the time. He's the most talented player on the Lakers, and he's been playing about 30 minutes a game, and he's being more assertive on the offensive end. So I'm kind of looking more down in that cheaper range. Guys like Clarkson, guys like Dragic. Hopefully Dennis Schroeder becomes an option for us to save some money there. And maybe even a little bit of Reggie Jackson going up against Cleveland. Kyrie Irving, not really a great defender, and he's banged up right now. So, the guys in that like $65,000 to $65,000 range has been where I'm looking.
All right, I think that's very fair. I will say this: I think Steph Curry has a chance to crush if he gets Dennis Schroeder defense over Jeff Teague. So and we're talking about a 223 spread. So and I like the fact that this is the Golden State Warriors kicking their game off the road. So they're going to need a pretty strong performance against a good defensive team that could be limited if they go down to Schroeder. On the flip side of that, I want Schroeder absolutely if Jeff Teague is rolled out there as well. And I think if Reggie Jackson can be a guy that you definitely want to attack and use if Kyrie Irving is sitting on the sidelines here. Kyrie Irving defense is already okay to attack, but if you're going to put Delly out there as a starter, then I'm even more interested in Reggie Jackson. So that's how I have it breaking down. I don't think I'm really too interested in any other value plays overall. I'm going to stay away from Ronnie Price and Archie Goodwin and that whole mess. You've got some other potential options like Corey Joseph has a 6-man role, but not terribly interested overall. I think I'm going to draw the line at Schroeder if he's available and Jordan Clarkson against Milwaukee, and then just move on from there. Let's go ahead and talk about the shooting guard position here. The interesting guy for me is OJ Mayo, who's beginning some serious run and playing the LA Lakers. Are you going to be spreading the Mayo onto some of your lineups here for Monday?
I don't know if I need to. If I really needed the savings, I think he's probably my favorite salary saver because he's only $3,800, I think, over on FanDuel. So, that's incredibly cheap. But I'm actually looking a little bit up from him. I'm a fan of guys like, I don't hate Andrew Wiggins today at 67. I don't hate Kobe Bryant at 66. I think Chris Middleton against the Lakers is in a pretty good spot at 76. Obviously, Wade being banged up, I'm not going to use him. Not really looking at DeRozan, which could wind up being a mistake. I think he might have some tournament upside, but for cash games, I wouldn't be looking that way. Jamal Crawford's been doing really well lately at only 5,300. So I think there's a lot of those guys in that price range again in the 53 to 65, 67 price range that I'm going to be looking at there to put into my rosters.
Yeah, I agree with you there as well. Chris Middleton is a guy that I love locking into my rosters too. As I think he's one of the second highest priced player, but he's still very reasonable at 7,600. I don't care that he had a bad game against Atlanta. That was supposed to be a good spot. When 30 fantasy points is considered bad, then you know that the guy has a pretty good amount of safety overall. So back in a very good matchup against the LA Lakers. Probably actually the worst out of the five. And if I had to pick a guy in Jordan Clarkson that you're actually going to attack, but regardless, people, make it rain, just like the Chicago Bulls who had been struggling against the LA Lakers, and the Milwaukee Bucks are at home. So I think I can definitely lock into some cash safety here with Middleton. And then I love Jamal Crawford there as well. And then I'm actually good with getting OJ Mayo into my lineup also there. I think there's some at least some GPP upside there as well, as long as he's going to be playing significant minutes in that lineup as in the 2 or the 1, and be above 30 plus. I think you need to take a look at the salary savings, because 3,800 is just such a bargain that you can take advantage of there on FanDuel. I love that price at 800 over minimum salary. Yes, sir. I'll take some of that, please. All right, before we move off the shooting guard position, we have to let all the beloved pod listeners know, if you're not subscribing to Rotowire.com, what are you waiting for? If you love the advice of our podcast, you're going to love the website. You can try it for free with a 10-day trial at Rotowire.com/pod. We've got lineup optimizers for 8 different DFS sites covering MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL, college football, soccer, and golf. Up-to-the-minute depth charts, customizable league projections, and complete draft kits for all the major sports. Make sure you take advantage of your 10-day free trial, rotowire.com/pod. Make sure you let them know that Josh and Benny sent you. All right, let's go ahead and talk about what you're doing here at the 3 for Monday.
Yeah, I think the first guy we have to talk about is Luol Deng. He's put up 50 and 47 fantasy points in the last 2 games and has done it for 5,700 is what they're asking for him today. Now, if we keep getting, we know that Bosch is probably still out with the, the stuff that he's got going on with the blood clots. If Wade is still out as well, I think you have to look at Deng. I think he's almost a lock for 30 fantasy points. I know it's not the greatest matchup. He'll probably draw some Paul George defense. But again, if he's going to be this big a part of the team and what they're doing with, Wade and Bosch out, I think we basically are almost we almost have to roll him out there. So, at 5,700, he's probably my favorite play. And then I think you can link him with one of the expensive guys, especially if you take some of the savings we talked about at the other spots. So I like LeBron James against Detroit. If Kyrie is out, I think he's going to play a few more minutes and be asked to do a little more. So I would be willing to pay $10K for him today. And the other guy who I really like is Giannis. Giannis has been playing like 35 to 38 minutes, putting up like 40 fantasy points a game. 7,500 is a pretty fair price for him, and they're going up against the LA Lakers, which, as we said, is one of the best matchups at every position, so it doesn't really matter. So that's probably the way that I'm looking to go there.
Yeah, I think that's a very smart way to go about it overall. And the way that I'm approaching this, slate here is there's a couple different ways I think that you can go. If you're gonna go up top, off the back-to-back with LeBron or Melo, I'm okay with it. I don't love it overall. If you're going to use Luol Deng, I think there's some super value over there, but I just do not really like Paul George defense. So, but when you saw that production, you're like, dang, Luol Deng. I was like, wow. All right. Well, do your thing, dang. The one X factor for me here is, what you want to do with some of these, bottom basement guys like Shabazz Muhammad, who's been super productive, and he's just 900 above minimum salary. If he wasn't facing Boston defense, I would love him so much more, because 24.6 fantasy points was good for 6.4x plus, and he's back into that double-digit scoring volume, getting about 24 to 30 minutes per game. So something I keep tabs on there. I don't really necessarily want to play him against Boston defense, but that's something else I can keep tabs on. And then we need to find out how much usage we can get out of Jeff Green. Right now, I'm just not 19 minutes and a disappointing performance at Golden State, but that they're going to need him to play and to produce it. So some point I think he's going to have some value. I just don't know if right now is necessarily the time. So because of those uninspiring options, if you're not gambling on Deng, I think it may be worth it to at least go up to Antetokounmpo, who has the LA Lakers there, and it's priced at 7,500. So that's how I have that end up shaking out. And I don't want to start Tobias Harris in his first game against LeBron. So just don't really think, at home that's necessarily anything somebody should subscribe to. So a little bit thin. You may want to consider paying up. If you're not, you got PJ Tucker for value and Shabazz Muhammad if you can stomach the Boston defense, and then Kent Bazemore, I guess, for 4,800 against Golden State, although that is a very dangerous situation, playing a team that could take that 8-point spread and blow it up. It is the highest total on the game at 223, so never a bad idea for getting some sort of exposure in that fashion. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the power forward position. Are you going to be rolling with the Splash Cousin up top for 8,400 at power forward?
Yeah, I actually really like Draymond Green in this spot going up against Atlanta. It's the highest total game on the day at 223. He's coming off another triple-double that he had in his last game. And that's the thing is it's not so much that you expect him to, to like go off for 30 points or anything, but he's just so consistent every game where he's going to get you 10 to 15 points. He's going to get you 7 to 10 assists. He's going to get you 6 to 10 rebounds. And when you add all those numbers together, he can get you the 42 fantasy points that you need at 8,400 pretty easily. But there's a couple guys that I think are good tournament plays that are also good cash game plays because I think they have safe floors and much bigger ceilings than Draymond Green can have for the price. Maybe not total raw points, but Jabari Parker has been putting up, 46, 36, 31 in his last 3 games, and he's only like 5,500. So, you can get 6, 7x value out of him pretty easy if he repeats that. And he's playing close to 40 minutes in some of these games. I know the last one went into overtime, but even in an overtime game, the guy played 51 minutes. So, this is a guy who's seeing a ton of court time. So I think he's probably one of my favorites. Tristan Thompson has 3 straight back-to-back double-doubles. 15 and 13, 16 and 10, 14 and 14. So, if he's going to be putting up games like that, I think he's another guy that we have to, keep an eye on because at only 5,100, if he puts up even a minimum double-double of 10 and 10, he's getting us more than 5x value. So, if he can put up a, 15 and 15 kind of game, get us 35 to 40 fantasy points, for $5,000, that's going to give us a lot of upside there. And then I also like guys, safe for cash, I think like a Miles Turner, whose price has come down a little bit. He's somebody who's been putting up good numbers. I think Gorgie Dang has a bounce-back game in this one. Good matchup for him. He didn't have a good game last time out, so you might get some low ownership on him as well. So I think with the money that I was able to save at the guards, I'm going to be spending up at the, power forward spot. I think the lowest down I'd go is guys in that, Jabari Parker, Tristan Thompson range. I'm not really looking to go any further below that.
Yeah, I'm actually still okay with Mirza for 4,100 as a tournament-only play, and that's sort of where I want to draw the line. I believe I don't want to really get too much exposure to Lure or the Hump Yard Dog because I don't know how much I can trust them, but I love the call from Parker. He's been balling out of control, and Miles Turner is a super safe guy, and we know that they have issues in the front line with Amari Stoudemire filling in for Chris Bosh for Miles Turner. So I think that that's why you can sort of make a case for a little uptick in value with Miles Turner at 5,600 on FanDuel. And I'm with you on Gorgie Jang bouncing back as well. Mm-hmm. If you trust that you want to stick to the Atlanta and Golden State stack, Draymond Green 8,400 has become a reasonable price for him, especially as a guy who's still a consistent triple double threat. And then Paul Millsap on the other side for 8,100. But I think that you could just do better by saving $3K plus down in the Jabari Parker Miles Turner range, or almost $3K anyhow. So that's the neighborhood I choose to reside in. I think you're with me on that as well. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Fair enough. Before we move on to the center position, Benny, let's go ahead and talk about all these business owners out here that may need some help, may need a website. So if you need a website, why not do it yourself here with Wix.com? No matter what business you're in, Wix.com has something for you, used by more than 75 million people worldwide. Wix.com makes it easy to get the website live today. You need to get the word out about your business. It all starts with a stunning website. So with hundreds of designer-made, customizable templates to choose from, the drag and drop editor, there's no coding needed. You don't need to be a programmer or designer to create something beautiful. You can do it yourself with Wix.com. Wix.com. Wix.com empowers business owners to create their own professional websites each and every day. So when you're running your own business, you're bound to be too busy to be worrying about the budget, the scheduling appointments, or building a website for your business. And because you're too busy, it has to be easy. And that's where Wix.com comes in. With Wix.com, it's easy and free. Go to Wix.com to create your own website today. The results will be stunning. All right, before we move on to the center position, I want to talk quickly in terms of strategy here overall. We have a little bit one of the shorter slates, not a completely short slate. It is 7 games, but far and away, aside from the Boston Minnesota game, which is sort of weird for Boston to be at a total of 217, Golden State is blowing away the field with 223.5. Is there a scenario with all these sort of mid to smaller slates where you may feel comfortable in just loading up on a an Atlanta Golden State stack and seeing if that can just sweep all the money in some of your GPPs?
Yeah, it's not something that I usually do in cash games. Although having exposure to the highest total game for cash games is not ever a bad idea. But for tournaments, I definitely think that it's a viable strategy. What I like to do is basically you find those guys who you think are going to be the best value plays on the day. So maybe Jabari Parker, who you think is just too cheap, and you throw him in there. And, if, well, actually it would work out well for this game if Teague was out, because you can throw Dennis Schroeder in there or something like that. So you find 2 or 3 of the top value plays that you like and you plug them in. And then maybe you have a stud or two that you like. Maybe you're a big Karl Anthony Towns fan today, or you think that, LeBron is due for a huge game. And you throw in, those studs along with the value plays. And then you might have 4 or 5 spots in your lineup open. So for a tournament, if you can fit in 3 or 4 of the, high usage guys from this game, and the money works out that way, where you can get that all into your lineup, I think it's a good idea, because again, we've seen it time and time again. If that game goes to overtime or double overtime, whoever has exposure to it is going to get a big score. If that game winds up being one of those ones that's 125 to 120 or 119, you're going to have a whole bunch of guys in those games that wind up outproducing their salaries. So if you have enough exposure to one of those high scoring games, and then you pick the right value guys and the right studs to go with them, you could wind up with a roster that wins the entire GPP, because if that game winds up being the one you needed exposure to, and you pick the top value guys and the top studs on the day to go with it, there's a good chance that you're going to have, if not the absolute nuts of a lineup, pretty close to it. So I think there's a lot of upside when you're doing those kind of stacks when you're stacking a game. But just make sure you're stacking a game where you're expecting a lot of points. I will never stack a Utah Jazz or a San Antonio Spurs game. But Golden State Warriors is definitely a team that I think you can do that with, because we've seen a lot of their scores get into the 220, 230, 240 range.
Yep, I agree with you there as well. So this is one of those spots too where I think you can find enough cheap value on one side or the other to sort of if you're gonna bounce up in there and try to create a GPP stack, this could be a spot that you could actually where it would actually make some sense in my mind. So I'm actually considering doing that for the slate, so which is why I wanted to mention that before we move on to the center position. So let's go ahead and talk about that. The center position here for Friday's slate. We got the big cat, who I think is as expensive as ever, but maybe a potentially good matchup against the Boston Celtics, who don't have a good defensive matchup overall. Are you going with the big cat for 9K, or do you feel like you need to go below that for value?
Yeah, I am trying to get him in as many rosters as I can. Boston struggles guarding big guys, and he's been absolutely unreal lately. You look at some of his game logs, 51, 34, 56, 36, 48 in his last 4 games. So he's averaging about 44 fantasy points, which would be about 5x for him. I mean, he's expensive. Don't get me wrong. 9K is not an easy price to swallow, but for a guy who has... Let's see. He's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of his last 13 games. He's gone for at least 46 fantasy points or more. So it's not like he hasn't been paying off that salary. And again, we said Boston is a team that has a really weak interior. They basically struggle stopping big guys. So I definitely think you could pay up for Towns here. But I don't think he's the only option. I think for GPPs, I think Hassan Whiteside is a very sneaky option at 7,900. With all the guys that are injured, he had 23 points and 20 rebounds in the last game. That's a monster game that he put up there. So if you have people who are looking at Towns, I think Whiteside's going to fly under the radar a little bit. I think he's a guy you can definitely go to over there at 79. And then, Al Horford in that game against Golden State, if Draymond Green is going to be watching Paul Millsap at the 4, Horford's probably going to be the guy who's going to need to step up his offense. So I think he's in a good spot as well. And then if Tyson Chandler is out again too, I also really like Alex Len for pretty cheap to be a guy that can give you some upside. So those are the 4 guys that I'm looking at the center position today.
Yeah, I liked Karl Anthony Towns. I think he's a little bit expensive to me, but he's been producing at such a high clip, and I feel better that it's the second highest total on the board. So I'm definitely fine with that. I like Greg Monroe against the LA Lakers because, it is a bigger matchup with Roy Hibbert, but he's not a great defensive player. And whenever Hibbert faces inferior centers, he does better. And Hassan Whiteside, I hope that they don't continue to bring him off the bench, but regardless, he's just been putting up such monster numbers. I think you really can't deny it. And the only concern I have about DeAndre Jordan is, the 16-point spread, which I know we're not supposed to worry about in theory, but, he's not a volume scorer as it is. So it could be, it could make more sense to play roll a guy like Alex Len into their lineup for value rather than mess around with, hoping that DeAndre Jordan gets 30 minutes plus and Phoenix can stay in a game in a back-to-back on the road, which concerns me, which I think for what's I just basically talked myself out of playing both Len and DeAndre Jordan, given what we know about Phoenix. With their limited weapons and, back-to-back road travel, although Phoenix to LA is hardly a long road trip. But, but aside from that, I don't really like anybody below that. I would have been, sort of interested in Bogut until he started, until he got injured and wet the bed on Saturday in my FanDuel article. Thank you very much, Andrew Bogut. So appreciate that. But aside from that, I think we need to stay safe and draw the line for me, like at Whiteside. And, roll above that. Are you with me on that?
Yeah, I can come down to Horford too. I wouldn't hate, but
Horford
Whiteside
not going down. Oh, actually, you know what? It is going down. I didn't realize that. It is 7,200. You are correct.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Well, and that's actually the reason why I like Horford, because that's pretty cheap. If Whiteside was 7,200 or Towns was 7,200, we'd be all over them. So,
right, that's true.
That's true. Like I said, though, I like Towns and Whiteside to have more upside than Horford, but at 7,200, I think Horford can get us 36 to 40 fantasy points and be above the 5x mark we need.
Yeah, he becomes undeniable at that point. All right, and that's going to wrap it up for the Rotowire DFS podcast for Monday. If you're watching, you're live streaming with us, and it appears that some of you are. We definitely appreciate that. We'll try to do better with our wardrobe, like Black Monday for us. We didn't actually plan on doing stream today, but it's for the best. We're supposed to be trying to get as many of these out as possible, and our original plan was Tuesday through Friday streams. But technical difficulties said we must stream today. 6 shows we'll stream, and we'll be hanging up. And if you want to get ready for Tuesday as well, we'll do our 36-hour ahead show like we normally do. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to send your comments, complaints, and questions to us on Twitter at BennyR11, at Josh Hayes FS, and it's at Rotowire for all your season-long and DFS fantasy needs. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. We'll see you here in just a few moments.